Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Ford, thank you for joining us here today. It is interesting when you look back from the first conversations we had a couple of years ago under the former administration about the Merida plan, and we had a lot of questions and a lot of skepticism, and the challenge for us is how we support the Calderon administration, which are really doing some very heavy lifting in a very, very difficult situation, but also having the ability to go back to our constituents and our taxpayers and those of us who actually live on the border and explain and justify to them this extraordinary amount of money that we are, of course, are sending to Mexico. I come from the more porous part of the district, so if I sound a little angry, it's because I am. I represent half of the Tucson sector, which by far, about 10 years ago, we had over 700,000 apprehensions. And last year we were down to 242,000 apprehensions, but over 1.2 million pounds of marijuana that was actually seized in my sector. And when people say that the border is more secure now than it's ever been, I beg them to come down and actually talk directly to my constituents, to the ranchers out in Cochise County, to the Krentz family who had a family member that was murdered on his own land, and explain how much safer it is when their property values have absolutely plummeted and they don't feel safe. So the challenges we have, and I was fortunate to have the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee with us a couple of weeks ago down for a border tour and for a chance to spend time with the ranchers and to do a round-tour town hall meeting, for the chairman to hear directly about what's working and what's not working. And with that, we had the sector chief of the Border Patrol alongside. And so my questions, and again, I know we're talking about different programs, we're talking about north side of the border and south side of the border, but the reality is it's all one big area when it comes to drugs that are moving south up northward, and we have cash and arms going in the other direction. And if we're going to get operational control of the border, we're going to have to think bilateral. And so my question to you is, what sort of coordination is going on with the expenditure of the Merida money and the plans with the sector chiefs, particularly in the worst areas of the border?
Okay, that's a very good question. And here's my challenge in answering that. We know that there are a lot of efforts between our government and Mexico on the border being undertaken primarily with DHS, ATF, law enforcement community, state and local government. Many of those activities, as far as we know, are not really connected to the Merida program in terms of the assistance that we're providing to Mexico. There are some programs that are directly related to the border, such as providing communication equipment. For example, the Department of Defense is providing a communication equipment to their counterparts. ATF is running their gun runner program, which is on the border. ICE has their gun program and their smuggling programs, anti-smuggling programs. A lot of those efforts, to our knowledge, are not directly associated with the Merida program. So I can't answer your question holistically in terms of what our government is doing on the border. I know there's lots of things going on. We didn't study in detail many of those other programs for this particular job that I'm reporting on, but to the extent we had information about what we're providing to the Mexican counterparts, like the Customs Service, we're giving them equipment. We're providing canine units to prevent smuggling up that should work for both sides of the border. There are a number of things we are financing with the Merida money, but it's only part of, I think, your broader question was what's the government as a whole doing to protect the border. And I don't know enough about how to answer that for the whole government, but I will say for the Merida program, there are programs designed to help address the border specifically, not just the broader going after the drug traffickers.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ford, part of when you're actually on the front line, you spend a lot of time with the law enforcement agents and the Border Patrol and the people that live there. It becomes pretty, and then you look at the numbers, and the numbers just speak for themselves. The Tucson sector has more than all the other areas combined when it comes to seizures of narcotics. So there's potential in all sorts of coming in from the Canadian border or on the coast, but the reality is it's coming through Arizona right now in huge, huge numbers. So with the deployment of the National Guard that's going to start in a couple of weeks, we're spending a lot of money on bringing the Guard in. We've got a huge supplemental we're waiting to have the Senate pass through with $700 million as well that's going to go towards increased Border Patrol and ICE agents and, a huge increase of resources. But if the coordination isn't taking place, and I beg people to come down, drive along the border, and see if you see one Mexican vehicle patrolling. One. I mean, of all the time that I've been in Congress and all the time I spend out there, I have never seen one vehicle on the other side of the border. Not one camera, not one radar system, not one balloon, not any type of surveillance. So, the numbers speak for themselves, and I just, we're spending a lot of money, and I'm not saying it's a waste. I'm just saying that we know where the drugs are coming in because we can just estimate by the seizures that we have. Yet here we're spending money. We've got DOD money. We've got Department of State money. We've got DHS money. We've got a lot of money flowing. But when you talk to my sector chief that's on the front lines, he's not aware. He's not being asked. Should we put the resources south of Douglas or south of Nogales? No one's talking to him, and that's where I don't get it. I don't know how we can sit here and with straight faces talk about why this is a good program if that just on the ground coordination is not taking place.
I don't know what to say. I mean, again, part of the reason we think that they need to develop these metrics we talked about is so you can get an answer to that question. Right now, I don't see any way how the administration can answer that because they don't have a way of saying whether or not the border effectiveness from the Mexican side is being improved because of our money. There's no way for us to know that at this point.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd love to work with you and others to figure this out because obviously this is an extraordinary sum of money that we're spending to secure the border and to try to reduce the amount of drugs that are smuggled in. But if we don't have the metrics and if we don't have the coordinated plan, then I would argue that we need to rethink this.
Well, let me just say, Ms. Giffords, I would be delighted to work with you. As you well know, I have a Tucson connection with my son graduating from the university there. And I'm hoping that your constituents do know that you're doing an excellent job fighting for these things, and I do hope we can have that hearing in Tucson or around Tucson before the end of the year. So I look forward to working with you on that.